Hi everybody again, and welcome to this, the third in this series of videos all about how to do the AAT synoptic practice tests. So this is how the spreadsheet looked at the end of the previous video. Now we have to do a few things to it in the next part, which is part 2. So part B, I should say, is the name of this task. So here are the 4 things we have to do. We have to use absolute cell referencing to calculate the gross sales value of each invoice using the VAT figure provided in cell I2. Now again, that sounds quite complicated, but as you'll see in a second, it really isn't. Also, check for and remove any duplicates in the invoices. I'll be showing you a couple of ways of doing that, one of which I think is slightly more satisfying than the other, I think. We will find duplicates, and we must enter the number that we found in cell J2, and finally, and quite simply, make sure all the contents of every cell can be seen. So let's have a go at that. So the first one of those tasks is to use absolute cell referencing to calculate the gross sales value of each invoice using the VAT figure provided in cell I2. And what that means is, starting with the first item, again, which is here the one bowl and drainer, is to work out the gross sales for that. Now the gross sales value is simply the net sales that we found in a previous video with VAT added. And the VAT figure is provided up here in I2, and it is 20%. And it couldn't be simpler really to add that on. The formula is just, in plain English, what you do is you take the net sales figure, you multiply it by the 20%, which will give you 20% of that, but then add on the sales figure as well to get back up to the point where you've got the net sales figure plus 20%. If we just multiply net sales by 20%, we'll end up with the VAT, but not the actual gross sales value, which is net sales plus the VAT. But the formula is very simple. As always, it starts with equals, and then it's just the net sales value, which in this case is in H7, multiplied by the VAT value, which is in I2. But then that will just give us the VAT. We then have to add on the net sales figure to get the net sales figure plus the VAT. Hopefully that makes sense. This should look about right. It should look like £5,842 plus about 20% of that, 7,000. That looks about right. You can see we've added it on. If we come up there with a figure of about £1,000, we'd know that that was just the VAT and not the net sales with the VAT added on. Now all you've got to do then is autofill this down, or have you? Let's have a look. See if I won't autofill it all the way because I know this is going to go wrong. Something's gone wrong there, and it's simply to do with the fact of absolute cell referencing, which is asked for in the question. If I just undo that and have a close inspection of the formula there, I'll just autofill it down a couple of spaces, and you'll see that the first formula is good. It's multiplying H7 by I2 and adding on H7. But then if I use my arrow key to go down one cell, it's multiplying H8 now by I3. A bit like when we did the net sales in the previous video. As the autofill moves the formula down, it's also moving the cell that it's looking at for the VAT. It's moving that down as well. So it starts off as I2, but becomes I3 and I4 and I5. So we're no longer actually using the VAT figure. So if you remember absolute cell referencing from the previous video, it's just a question of putting a $sign in front of the I and a $sign in front of the 2. In fact, some of you might have realized actually we don't even need the $sign in front of the I, actually, because it's not the I that's the problem, of course. The I isn't changing, it's the 2. But it's a good idea to get into the habit of putting the $sign in front of both there, although it's only needed in front of the 2. So let's see if that's working now. It should now autofill fine. We'll just do the first few and just inspect the formula there. H7 times I2 absolute plus H7. And then as I move down, H10, H11 is fine, but it's still multiplying by I2 then, absolute. So I can quite happily autofill all of those down. There's nearly 400 rows to this, so it takes a few seconds there, but that's that part done. And the next thing we're asked to do in part B is to remove any duplicates and then put the number of how many duplicates we find in cell J2 up here. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. The first of which is to use conditional formatting, which I think is the best way. And you get that from the Home tab. I'm going to highlight, I'm going to completely highlight column G, because we're looking for duplicate invoice numbers here. In fact, there are a certain number of rows, a certain number of records in this spreadsheet which are complete duplicates of other rows, and the invoice number will show that up. If we find duplicates in the invoice number, then that will show us the duplicates. So I've completely, I've selected the whole of column G there. I'm now going to go to conditional formatting up here. We've used this in the past for things like showing up cells that are below a certain figure or above a certain figure, or loss-making cells in a spreadsheet and that sort of thing. But there is also a feature for finding duplicates, and it's in the highlight cell rules and then duplicate values. And then it's saying how do we want to show up those duplicate values. We'll use the default, which is duplicate values will be shown up with a light red fill with dark red text. Click OK. Nothing seems to have happened because there aren't any on the first page of it. When we look a bit further down, here we go. Here they are, just hiding down when we scroll down to the second page. Now, it actually looks like there are 4 duplicates here, but of course, every record that's duplicated creates a pair of duplicates. So you can see, for example, that this cell, this record here, this row, is an exact duplicate of that one. They're just complete duplicates. It's just a complete clone of that. And similarly, these two here are duplicates. So it looks like the number we have to put in J2 is actually 4, but in fact it's 2. There are only 2 duplicates. And we can then go ahead and delete either one. We're going to delete this one here. I'll right-click on the number 47 there and delete that. And of course, then the duplicates disappear. The formatting disappears because that is no longer a duplicate. It automatically, the formatting disappears. We'll delete that one too. And the number we put up here is 2. I'll just undo that, all of that, because I also want to show you the other way of doing it. And that is to use, there is actually a remove duplicates feature, which is in the data ribbon. There it is there. Personally, I don't find this as satisfying really, because you don't get to remove them yourself. It does it automatically, and you don't get the actual highlighting of the cells which are duplicates. But it's much quicker. You just simply click. You need to click anywhere in the data set, any cell at all. Remove duplicates. Don't change any of the default values. Click OK, and it's found the 2 duplicates and removed them as well. And we click OK there. The only way of proving it's actually found them is that if I go backwards there a couple of steps and we look at how many records there are, there's 392 records before the removing of the duplicates. If I then do the remove duplicates, it's done it all automatically, and now there are 390, which I find I prefer the manual way of doing it. It's just that little bit more satisfying, I think, to actually remove them yourself. And I think you'll agree. The good thing about both methods there, using both of them, is that it did confirm the fact that there are 2 duplicates in there. Both methods found the same number of duplicates. Now, the final thing that we're asked to do is to change the column widths to make sure that all information is visible. This is a standard thing to do in spreadsheets. You can see here we've got some of these columns are too narrow. Column B is the obvious one. You can't read all of the descriptions of these sinks. 1 cubic bowl and something. So what we can do is we can manually make the column wider. What I tend to do is make it sort of much too wide and then bring it back to the correct width again. Again, there is an automatic way of doing this, but again, I don't find it all that satisfactory really, which is to double click in this area where you would move the column manually. You actually just double click on there. See what you think of that. I sometimes find that makes the column too narrow, and I have to just fiddle with it anyway just to get it right. But see what you feel about that. That one's pretty good anyway. Again, see what it did with that one. It just makes it a bit too narrow, I think. Column F as well needs to be a bit wider. But you can experiment there. See what you think of it. But whichever method you use there, either the manual or the automatic, you must to read the instructions here, make sure all the contents of every cell can be seen. So let's just check that we've done everything that Part B requires. We've used absolute cell referencing to calculate the gross sales value of each invoice, using the VAT figure provided in cell I2 there. We've done that. We've checked for and removed any duplicates in the invoices using two methods there, just as a double check. You'd only need to use one of them in the exam, but it's just a double check that they both find the same value. And we've entered the number of duplicates that we found in cell J2. We found 2 duplicates, and we've made sure that all the contents of every cell can be seen. So as always, with all of the videos in this series, if you're not sure about any of it at all, have another go. You can rewind, you can fast forward, you can pause bits, you can have a go. You can even watch the whole video again if you like. And I hope you found this one useful and you feel confident now to go and have a go yourself. And I'll see you in the next video, which will be showing you how to do Part C, in which the main job is to create a pivot table.